Welcome to the Great White Brotherhood YouTube channel.
Hello, everyone. For those of you who are following along, welcome back. For those of you who are new, my name is Guy. We're going to continue on today with reading the book, The Path of Mankind. We're going to be reading chapter 1, The Great Design. It's actually quite a long chapter, so I'm going to need to break this up into two, probably three parts. So, keep an eye out for those series. And I'm going to record it all today and then release part 1 today, part 2 probably tomorrow, and so on. I would also like to thank everybody for leaving the wonderful comments that you've leaving under the video saying how much you like this new series and the direction that the channel has taken. So thank you very much. I appreciate those comments, and I'm very pleased that everybody is liking this. Okay, so here we go. Chapter 1, The Great Design. People have long wondered about the origin of humanity, where it came from, and why. It appears that all other life is so simple and trouble-free. Mammals, fish, and all creatures that inhabit Earth seem to get by worry-free. They do not need clothes. They all seem to find enough to eat each day, and when they have nothing better to do, they sleep deep, untroubled sleep until they feel that it is the moment to wake up and pursue some other activity. Hunting, mating, eating, and once that craving satisfied, they sleep again. The only variation to this pattern seems to occur when an animal has young to care for. Then, and only then, does another instinct come to the fore that we term the maternal instinct. Then the selfish aspects that dominates most of their lives takes a back seat, and for the first time the creature or creatures start to put others first and themselves second, or not at all. Many creatures will give their lives and die if necessary, protecting their young if attacked by a predator intent on harming those young. For the first time, we see in such creatures instincts that we could recognize and improve of. We sometimes give these attributes human characteristics and talk of motherly love and the maternal instinct of such animals. Whether the animals themselves would recognize such attributes or whether they are merely following the instincts that nature has instilled in them is another matter. But from our point of view, we can associate with the actions of a female mammal suckling its cuddly young and lavishing upon them as much care as even the most attentive human could. This connection between the way in which an animal cares for its young and the attitude that decent humans have towards each other provides a clue as to the difference and the similarity between the animal population and humans. So, we can see that humans clearly have, in certain circumstances, attributes, both that we call positive and negative, a connection between the animal kingdom and us. It is possible for man to be completely callous, selfish, and looking out exclusively for himself. But it is possible for man to be loving, caring, laying down his life to save another if required. Thus, we can clearly see the connection in animalistic terms between man and beast. Yet, for most thinking people, it is clear that man is not an animal. Animals do not wear clothes, but man does. Animals seem, generally, to be able to provide their nourishment for themselves, whereas man, in the same circumstances, would have to ape animal behavior and hunt or grub in the dirt for food or succumb to starvation. He would not be able to have the types of food that he is used to in civilized society. One could go on. Even hive creatures like ants and bees live by different rules to man, even though their behavior has been long admired by some people, and attempts to install such a hierarchical system of control from one almighty being, the queen ant or bee, down through a military type of protection system to the workers, toiling endlessly without question to provide all that the hive or nest requires. Their useless bodies, once they have expired through exhaustion, either being recycled as food for the living or being ejected outside the nest as useless dross. Such a system would gain great popularity in many communities, but can hardly be approved when compared to the love given by a mother animal to its offspring. So, where does this comparison of the different aspects of animal life take us? Does it help in any way or fashion to discover the origins of mankind? We have looked at some of the aspects of animalistic behavior and considered the cold, almost military way that certain insect groups behave. Through the normal, somewhat selfish mindset of the average animal, and then considered the loving, caring, giving aspects of certain creatures during the period where they have young to care for. Now, let us go back a long way in time before anything that we would describe as living existed. What did the world look like? It is possible to conjecture that if one trawls far enough back in time, we would arrive at a point where nothing existed. Such an exercise would provide little edification in identifying the origin of the creation of man. So we skip forward to the point where planets exist, but life on them does not. It is not possible to put a precise date on such a period because, due to the fact that life as we know it did not exist, no one was present to measure or note such a time. And yet, something must have existed in order to organize and put in motion the wheels of creation that have resulted in all that we currently see. If we are to find out what that something was that kick-started life, perhaps by extrapolation, we can uncover the source from whence mankind appeared. So, we are at a point where planets now exist, but there is no life as we would know it anywhere in the universe. This is where we need to move outside of physicality and grope the depths of the invisible worlds, real and vibrant within their own dimensions, but only recently thought about by a branch of science known as quantum mechanics. This branch of investigation of life, unfortunately, describes these different universes as bands, strings, lifeless mathematical concepts that may, indeed, describe the basic concepts of the various dimensions, but fails totally to embrace the reality of the dynamic essence that these dimensions actually portray. Indeed, it is true to say that, without the various dimensions that science has only recently discovered, physical reality would not be possible because what is visible around us, that is called reality, is the end result of the complex interplay of the dimensional forces that permit so called reality to exist, as has been explained in previous works, other books, lessons, videos. And the other saying that just came to mind was, as above, so below. So, we need to discover how and why dimensions came into being before we can hope, eventually, to discover how man could have physical form on planet Earth. Life is very complex, and yet life is the only thing that exists. Where did this life come from? This is where we have to admit that we have a gap in our knowledge. Many of us have spent vast amounts of time and energy investigating this mysterious force, but it seems to be deemed to be the one great unsolvable mystery. We feel the need to explain somewhat, but the conundrum can be summed up in the question that has been asked for millennia. What came first, the chicken or the egg? If and when anyone can satisfactorily answer that question, he will have the key to the question of where life came from. Obviously, over time, wise men have pondered the question and have proposed some very intelligent solutions, but none of them have stood the test of time. The chicken and egg mystery is, of course, closely connected to another. Who created everything in the first place? Science generally ignores such questions, preferring to deal with subjects to which they can provide answers. Religions claim the monopoly of knowledge as to who and what God is, but if pushed, will have to admit that the origin of God is a mystery to them. As far as is known, the origin of the life force, known as God, is not understood by any force anywhere in the various galaxies, nor in the dimensions enrobing the galaxies. So, there is this one vital point that, for the moment, remains unanswerable. Perhaps it is just as well, because if it was discovered that the life force we call God was made by some other life force, we would open a Pandora's box of questions as to who invented who indefinitely. We are looking for answers, not endless questions. So we start with the premise that states that some force, that some people refer to as God, is a life force and is the only life force that has ever existed or ever will. Nothing can exist in any plane of reality, from physical to the uppermost dimension, unless it has this life force associated with it. It may be difficult to comprehend that a grain of sand is alive, but it is so. Now, we should, perhaps, elucidate at this point that being alive does not necessarily imply sentience or to have the ability to move. Life comes in many forms. Some are totally static and apparently lifeless, such as rocks and stones, and others are capable of moving at speed, such as birds, but they all contain one thing: life. So, what is life? We will not insult your intelligence by describing the physical events observable on Earth. We are interested in examining the life force, invisible, behind and beyond anything that can be measured by instruments connected to a sick person in a hospital, to indicate to the hospital staff that the physical body of the patient still has a beating heart. The life force is an invisible, unknowable energy that was mentioned earlier, that was referred to as God. As we do not know what God is, except for the fact that it contains the life force, so we cannot actually explain what the life force is. But we do know one important aspect of it. There is but one life force. To many people alive on Earth today, this fact is known, but there are also large numbers of people, both and incarnate and discarnate, who do not know this fundamental truth. All life is one. Ridiculous as this seems, it is true. Accepting this fact has enabled us to look back in time to the point that was mentioned earlier in this chapter, the place where planets existed, but there was no life on any of the planets, nor in any of the dimensions that were also mentioned. So, we have to accept that this life force created, using the laws of physics, a variety of planets in an invisible series of vibrational constructs that we refer to as dimensions. Each dimension can be imagined as a planet or series of planets, real and solid, but each dimension separated from another due to being subject to a different carrier wave. It appears that the mysterious life we call God created these dimensions as different experiments in its quest to discover just what life could create. because life is not just a static force. It contains curiosity, desire for knowledge, for expansion, and so, to assist in its quest for self awareness and growth, different bands of vibration were set up. And by the law of mutual attraction, a fundamental part of the law of God, planets corresponding to that particular vibration were created. This force we call God set up 8 distinct bands, dimensions, and furnished these dimensions with planets. Now, we have to appreciate that God, this life force, is one unique life force. This being so, it could only create one life. But in order to create a maximum of opportunity for expansion and knowledge, wisdom, it divided this one life force into 8 subsections by dividing the one life force into 8 different vibratory bands. We wish you to comprehend that all around you is the universe that you can observe in the night sky, and much more outside of the Milky Way, repeated another 7 times, each universe identical to the one you observe, but invisible to your eyes because it is subject to a carrier wave of a slightly different frequency. The universe in which you currently live is also vibrating, but you are not aware of it, as you yourself are part of this effect and vibrate in harmony with your visible universe. You also have bodies that are part and parcel of the other universes, but we will deal with that subject later. So, to labor the point, we wish to make it clear to you that this force we call God, which is life, and life contains intelligence, created what you refer to as physical universe, but also created 7 more universes on different carrier waves, copies of the physical universe. However, the total of all 8 universes are one, and that one we refer to as God. So, the form of man is multi-layered, multi-dimensional, that together make the person we know as man. This fact has been kept from humanity for long ages because a control system that was constructed also long ages ago for the simple reason to keep mankind enslaved, under servitude, to a relatively few people who themselves may not know the truth about man, but have been educated to act as controllers of humanity. We need to examine who these controllers, these overseers of humanity are, and why they do this. To understand this slave system will take us outside of physicality and into at least one of the dimensions. Everything that we see in the physical world, as was stated, is multidimensional. Everything physical has 8 layers. The physical reality is the lowest. But man, just to concentrate on him, has 7 other layers or bodies, each one separated from his physical body and his other bodies by a different carrier wave frequency. So, to reiterate, man is a creature with 8 different but identical bodies, each one standing in a universe, but each one enwrapped in that unique universe due to being encoded by a different unique frequency. However, not all life forms are quite like that. Some, like man, when he dies, discards the lowest frequency and moves his consciousness into the next, higher frequency, and finds himself alive and present in that frequency. The more higher the more higher frequencies are present, but sorry, I lost my spot here. The more higher frequencies are present, but because he is not aware that he has these other bodies, he does not explore them, and so they remain quiescent, awaiting the happy day when he does become aware of them and decides to explore them with his mind. But there are many entities that do not have physicality. They may well have all the other higher auras, as they are called, and some of them have developed the ability to move into them at will and explore the wonders that are available in those worlds. Equally, There are other beings that live in the esoteric realms that are so cut off from the God force that their higher frequencies are virtually non existent. One such group have been known for long ages and have been given the name the Archons. These creatures live in a dimension just outside of the physical dimension, and, as was stated, because they have chosen to ignore their higher frequencies, are totally cut off from any positive power that automatically flows from the higher realms into the lower. Thus, these beings, the Archons, have all of their consciousness concentrated in this one etheric band, all else, in effect, not existing as far as they are concerned. Now, these entities, the Archons, are totally unaware and totally non affected by any thoughts and feelings of their higher concepts. Nothing that we would consider holy or godlike enters their minds or their realities. But these creatures are real, thinking beings, although if we were to meet one and try to converse with it, we would find their thoughts so alien to ours that it would be quite impossible to find any common ground for dialogue. They, like all life, have existed for a long time, but have made no progress towards the Godhead, which is the prime consideration of the majority of life. Thus, they are unique, outcasts from all other life, containing not evil as such, but total non consideration for anything or anyone outside of themselves. However, like all things, they are immortal. Virtually all other life progresses slowly from one frequency to another, discarding the lower frequencies as they do, rather like peeling the layers from an onion, until finally they reveal their goal, the Godhead. Although, with all life, it takes an enormous amount of time to move to that final vibration, the Godhead. All creatures are aware, at some level, that the frequency exists, and so all creatures, whatever their shape, form, or origin, retain a sense of holiness, albeit in some creatures closely hidden from their actual level. But, nevertheless, it is there and guides all life upwards, from frequency to frequency, carrier wave to carrier wave, the lower ones being cast off as they rise. All life does this except one group, the Archons. They have remained static for so long that they cannot imagine that anything else exists, any higher form of life exists. This, over eons of time, has molded a particular character, both in an individual sense and in a collective regard. Thus, they would, from our perspective, seem to be very one sided, totally focused on the very things that the majority of us try to reject: fear, hate, jealousy, and all the things that we would consider negative and make us unhappy. Thus, most of us seek to live in situations where these emotions are not uppermost in our lives, and we try to replace them with love and friendliness. But these unfortunate beings, the Archons, know only these negative emotions. Indeed, if someone spoke to one of these Archons and suggested that there were other, better emotions that he could include in his makeup, he would think we were mad. Nothing that could be considered positive by us would enter the mind of the archonic creatures, and so they live in a world of hate, a dark world indeed. So, to make things clear, these archons are not aware of any frequencies higher than the one in which they live, but a long time ago they became aware of a frequency beneath theirs. This, unfortunately, is the one that physical life lives in: your world, our world. The aim of all life is to move in frequency. With the vast majority of life, the movement takes them upwards in frequency into higher, more holy frequencies. In the case of archons, they too feel the need to explore other frequencies and progress into them if they can. But as they are totally unaware that higher realms exist, this drive took them to explore the only frequency they could, which happens to be the physical realm. It must be remembered that archons are non physical, and so they don't have physical bodies. Thus, they found it impossible, actually, to integrate this lower frequency into their creation. They remain etheric beings. However, the drive to move in frequency is paramount in all life, and the archons are no exception. Many long years ago, they found that they could, in certain circumstances, integrate your world somewhat, not in a physical sense, but by taking over the minds of humans. However, they hit a snag, a problem that they could not deal with. As they tried to integrate with humans, they found that the minds of most humans, even those long years ago, contained elements of the higher, more holy frequencies. This was incompatible with their frequency, and so they found that they could not mold with the majority of humans. However, the drive to change frequency being irresistible, they looked for a way to resolve the problem and find a group of people with whom they could integrate. People like minded with them, totally concentrated on self, with none of the higher emotions present in their personalities. Long years ago, they discovered a group that thought like them. This group we consider to be victims of an illness that causes them to be unlike most of us. The majority of people are naturally gentle, kind, loving, and generous, putting others, if not first in their lives, at least more or less equal to them and worthy of consideration. However, there is this relatively small group of people who do not think like the majority. This group only thinks of themselves, their needs, wants, and ambitions, and are willing to do anything to satisfy their aims. We call them psychopaths. This was the very group that the archons were searching for, people like minded with them, and so they found it easy to mold with these people, integrate their personalities, and, virtually, to become one with them. However, these psychopathic people found themselves outcasts from most societies, either banished, imprisoned, or executed. This did not serve the archonic needs. There was no point in integrating with a person only to find that person banished, imprisoned, or to have his physical incarnation terminated. So, the solution was found. All right, I'm going to stop there on a bit of a cliffhanger, but I'll stop here and I'll start another video, which will be part 2. So please, once you're finished this part 1, you can go over to part 2 and I'll join you over there. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you for watching this video. Please visit our website at thegreatwhitebrotherhood.org for free books and lessons to help you on your spiritual journey.